Okay, so let me tell you about something that happened on NBA Today yesterday that literally stopped me in my tracks. I'm watching the show, right? Just another Tuesday afternoon, thinking we're going to get the usual rundown of scores and highlights. And then Malika Andrews throws to the panel, and they start talking about the Warriors and Colin Sexton. And I swear, my coffee almost went cold because I was so locked into what they were saying. This isn't just your typical trade rumor discussion where they throw names around for content. This felt different. This felt real. This felt like the kind of move that could legitimately alter the entire trajectory of Golden State's season. And I need to walk you through every single detail of what went down, because the implications here are absolutely massive for both franchises involved. Hey, what's up, everyone? 1 second before we dive in, that like button right there? Hit it now. Takes literally 1 second, but makes a massive difference in growing this channel and reaching more fans. Just smash that, like real quick. Every like pushes this video further, so do me that favor right now. So the show opens, and they've got the whole crew assembled, and immediately they start showing footage of Colin Sexton from this season with the Charlotte Hornets. And the first thing that jumps out at you is just how hungry this dude looks every single night. We're talking about a guy who's putting up solid numbers on a team that's completely in rebuild mode, a team that's prioritizing development over wins, a team that honestly has no business keeping a player of Sexton's caliber if they're serious about accelerating their timeline toward contention. And that's when they put his stats up on the screen, and you start to really understand why the Warriors are circling around this situation like sharks smelling blood in the water. Sexton's averaging right around 17 points per game. He's shooting approximately 39% from three-point range, which in today's NBA is absolutely crucial, especially for a team like Golden State that lives and dies by the three ball. And more importantly, he's showing the kind of shot creation ability and isolation scoring that the Warriors desperately need when Stephen Curry is either on the bench or getting doubled and tripled every single possession. The panel on NBA Today really emphasized this point, and I think it's the most critical aspect of understanding why this trade makes so much sense from Golden State's perspective. They've got arguably the greatest shooter in basketball history. But what happens when teams just refuse to let Steph beat them? What happens in those crucial playoff moments when the defense is dialed in and you need someone else who can create their own shot and get a bucket when the play breaks down? And here's where the conversation on the show got really fascinating, because they brought in a former GM. I forget exactly who it was, but someone with serious front office experience, and this guy starts breaking down the Warriors' roster construction in a way that made everything click into place for me. He's talking about how Golden State has been trying to balance this incredibly difficult tightrope act of competing now while Steph is still in his prime, but also not completely mortgaging their future by trading away every young asset they have. And Sexton represents this perfect middle ground where you're getting a proven NBA scorer who's still only 29 years old, who's on an expiring contract after next season, which means you're not locked into some long-term financial commitment that could cripple your flexibility, and who fills an immediate need without requiring you to gut your entire developmental pipeline. The really interesting part came when they started comparing Sexton to other potential targets the Warriors could go after. They ran through names like Zach LaVine. They mentioned DeMar DeRozan in passing, even though he just signed elsewhere. They talked about some of the younger guards who might be available, and every single time they came back to Sexton as the most logical fit. Not the flashiest name, not the guy who's going to sell the most jerseys, but the player who makes the most sense from a basketball perspective when you really dig into the detail. His contract situation is manageable at around $19 million for next season. His skill set complements what the Warriors already have, rather than duplicating. His age lines up reasonably well with the tail end of Steph's prime years. And perhaps most importantly, the cost of acquisition wouldn't be catastrophic in terms of what Golden State would have to give up. Now let's talk about the Charlotte side of this equation, because that's equally important. And the NBA Today panel spent a good amount of time exploring the Hornets' perspective on why they'd be willing to move a productive player like Sexton. Charlotte is in full rebuild mode. There's no sugarcoating it, and when you're in that position, you need to be ruthless about maximizing the value of every asset on your roster. LaMelo Ball is clearly their franchise cornerstone. They've got some young pieces they're trying to develop, and they need draft capital and prospects who fit their timeline. Sexton is a good player, a really good player actually, but he's not someone who's going to be in his prime when the Hornets are realistically ready to compete for anything meaningful. So, from Charlotte's perspective, if they can flip Sexton to a contender like the Warriors and get back a couple of draft picks, maybe a young player or two who's still developing, that's the kind of move you have to seriously consider when you're thinking 3 or 4 years down the line, rather than just next season. The panel had this really detailed discussion about what a potential trade package might look like, and this is where you could see everyone on the show getting genuinely excited about the possibility, because it's one of those rare situations where you can construct a deal that actually makes sense for both sides. The Warriors would probably need to include some combination of their own draft picks, maybe a future first-rounder that's protected, definitely some second-round picks to sweeten the pot, and then potentially a young player who hasn't quite broken through in Golden State's rotation, but could get more opportunities in Charlotte's developmental system. Names like Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga weren't specifically mentioned in my viewing, but those are the types of players you'd be talking about as potential trade chips. And here's the thing that makes it work for the Warriors. They've got enough depth in that backcourt and wing rotation where they could afford to part with one of those younger guys if it means bringing in someone like Sexton who can contribute immediately to winning basketball games right now. But let me take you deeper into why this move is so fascinating from a pure basketball strategy standpoint. And this is something the NBA Today crew really hammered home that I think a lot of casual fans might miss. The Warriors have been running into this problem all season, where they've got all these guards on the roster. They've been signing guys left and right, trying to find the right combinations, but they're lacking that explosive scoring punch from someone other than Steph, who can just go get you 15 or 20 points on any given night without needing the entire offense to revolve around them. Look at their current roster composition, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. They've got guys like Buddy Hield, who was supposed to be this three-point specialist, but he's shooting in the low 30s from deep this year, which is completely unacceptable for someone getting rotation minutes based primarily on their shooting ability. They've got Brandon Podziemski, who shows flashes, but is still very much a developing player who's inconsistent from game to game. They just signed LJ Cryer from the G League, who looks promising, but is completely unproven at the NBA level. And then you've got veterans like Gary Payton II, who's fantastic defensively, but provides almost nothing on the offensive end. Sexton solves so many of these problems simultaneously, and I think that's what makes this potential trade so compelling when you really break it down. First of all, he's a legitimate scoring threat who can average between 15 and 20 points per game in a role where he's not even the primary option, which is exactly what Golden State needs. Second, his three-point shooting has improved dramatically over the past couple seasons to the point where he's become a legitimate floor spacer. And in Steve Kerr's motion offense, where everyone needs to be a threat from beyond the arc, that's absolutely essential. Third, and I think this is underrated, Sexton has shown the ability to play both on and off the ball effectively. He can run pick and roll as the ball handler when Steph is resting, but he's also comfortable catching and shooting or cutting to the basket when Curry has the ball in his hands. And that versatility is exactly what you need when you're trying to maximize the effectiveness of an all-time great shooter like Steph. The show also dove into some of the potential concerns with this move, and I appreciated that they didn't just present it as a slam-dunk no-brainer, because there are legitimate questions that need to be answered. The biggest one is defense. Sexton has never been known as a particularly strong defender, and the Warriors already have enough defensive liabilities in their backcourt rotation that adding another one could be problematic, especially come playoff time when teams are going to target your weakest links. Now, the counter-argument that was made on NBA Today, and I think it's a valid one, is that Golden State's defensive system is built around switching and help defense and protecting individual weaknesses through team concepts. So as long as Sexton is willing to buy in and put in the effort, which by all accounts he does, the Warriors have the infrastructure in place to hide his defensive limitations to some degree. Another concern they brought up was the fit in terms of ball dominance and usage rate. Sexton is used to having the ball in his hands a lot in Charlotte's offense because, frankly, they don't have a lot of other options for shot creation. In Golden State, he'd need to adjust to being more of a complementary piece, understanding that there are going to be nights where Steph takes 30 shots and Sexton might only get 10 or 12 attempts. But again, the panel made the point that Sexton's evolution as a three-point shooter and his improvement playing off the ball suggests he's capable of making that adjustment. And the potential rewards of having another dynamic scorer in the lineup far outweigh the risks of the transition period where everyone figures out their role. Let me paint you the picture of what this Warriors team could look like if they pull off this trade, because this is where it gets really exciting. And this is what had me so engaged watching NBA Today break it all down. Imagine a starting lineup or a closing lineup in crucial games where you've got Stephen Curry, obviously, you've got Draymond Green providing the defensive anchor and playmaking, you've got Andrew Wiggins, who's been much better this season than last year, and then you slide Sexton in there as your secondary ball handler and scorer. Suddenly, you've got two guys who can get you 20-plus points on any given night. You've got multiple pick-and-roll combinations you can run, depending on matchups. You've got floor spacing all over the court, because everyone can shoot. And you've got enough versatility that opposing defenses can't just load up on Steph and dare everyone else to beat them. That's a legitimate championship-caliber lineup if everyone's healthy and playing to their potential. And that's the kind of upside that makes a trade like this worth pursuing, even if there are some risks involved. The timing aspect is also crucial here, and the NBA Today panel really emphasized this point. We're approaching the trade deadline. Teams are starting to figure out where they stand in terms of contention versus rebuilding. And the Warriors are in this interesting position where they're competitive, but clearly not good enough as currently constructed to beat teams like the Thunder or the Nuggets, or whoever comes out of the East in a 7-game series. They need to make a move, they need to upgrade their talent level, and they need to do it in a way that doesn't completely sacrifice their future flexibility. Sexton checks all those boxes. His contract situation is ideal, the potential cost of acquisition is reasonable, and the basketball fit makes sense when you really examine how he'd be used in Golden State's system. And let's talk about the broader implications of this move beyond just the immediate basketball impact, because I think this is where it gets really interesting from a league-wide perspective. If the Warriors make this trade, it's a signal to the rest of the NBA that they're still in win-now mode, that they believe they can compete for a championship with this core, and that they're willing to be aggressive in pursuing upgrades rather than just hoping their young players develop quickly enough to contribute. That matters psychologically. That matters in terms of how other teams view Golden State as a threat. And that matters in terms of free agency and future transactions, because players want to go to teams that are serious about winning, and making a move like this demonstrates that commitment in a tangible way. The entire second hour of the show basically revolved around these broader strategic questions, and you could tell that everyone on the panel thought this was one of the more fascinating potential trades to watch as we head toward the deadline. This isn't just about adding a rotation player. This is about the Warriors making a statement about their intention and their belief in their ability to compete at the highest level. And that's the kind of storyline that makes the NBA so compelling to follow, because it's not just about basketball. It's about organizational philosophy and risk tolerance, and having the courage to make bold moves when the opportunity presents itself.